Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Good evening, boys and girls, kings and queens, princesses and princes. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on a healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. I hope everyone is doing fantastic this evening. Thank you for tuning in for another dynamite episode of the best little 10-minute parenting show on the planet. Perhaps the only 10-minute, not so 10-minute parenting show on the planet. Good evening to you, Ashley. Hola, buenas noches. All right, so this evening we're going to talk about hoarding. Spending some time with my lovely mother yesterday evening, and she likes to watch some of the weirdest shows. One that she likes to watch is called Dr. Pimple Popper. It is a show of this doctor who pops people's boils and bumps and cysts and zits and tumors and squeezes them and digs the sack out and stitches them back up and changes their lives. That's one of them. Another one she watches is Hoarders. You know, Hoarders has probably been on for the last 10 years, and I have never watched a single episode of Hoarders. It's just never been a show that really grabs my attention. I thought last night it came on, and I'm like, I'm going to watch this show. So they run a couple of different ones at the same time, and they have a therapist. So there's like a resident therapist for each of these families, and there's two of them. There's two of them last night, and they each have their own little therapist, and it's just so precious, the little therapist, dealing with the women and the hoarders. And these were two women, and one of them was a cat hoarder. She hoarded cats, and I think she had a couple of hundred in her house, and I think there was something like 85 cats dead in various freezers and refrigerators because she couldn't bring herself to let go of them after they had died. And the home was literally, you can imagine, a house with 200 cats just doing whatever they want to do. And this woman who loved each and every one of them and couldn't stand to be apart, and so they would die, and she'd stick them. There were cats stacks upon stacks of cats in the refrigerator and the freezer. She had a couple of them in bags, little plastic baggies, frozen. Oh, gosh. So in comes Miss Therapist for the cat hoarder, and then another lady who just, was very eccentric and hoarded a little bit of everything. So Mr. Therapist came in to work with her in her home. It was so interesting because the lady who was just hoarding everything, books, clothes, and everything, she had a organizer, a professional organizer. And it was interesting watching the show because the professional organizer was actually more of a therapist than even Mr. Therapist was. She was like giving direction and giving feedback and insights and organizing, telling people what was going to happen. And the therapist just kind of sat by, and every now and then he'd be like, well, I think this would be a good time for us to have a process, and we need to try to, get to the root of some of this stuff too. And then the lady therapist who dealt with OCD, that was her specialty, OCD, with the cats. And, I can imagine that those are some pretty overwhelming situations. Actually, I interviewed by Animal Planet years ago to work with. They were looking for a therapist to work with a little girl who had been raised by wolves in Romania. And so they wanted a therapist to be a part of this show, studying this little girl, and they called me and had me submit film, and I was interested, and I would have worked with her, but it would have been in a completely different way than probably most people would have worked with her. But what was interesting about these two individual hoarders, and I know some of you have children who hoard, or you work with children who hoard, and I've actually talked about hoarding and gorging in the Great Behavior Breakdown. And so just for those of you who are not aware, when you are a part of the Lovolution, the Great Behavior Breakdown ebook, all the audios and the workbooks are all a part of the membership. So you get free access to that. And I encourage you, and that's why we give you the workbook, I encourage you to teach classes and go out and spread the word to the community, in addition to the trauma-informed certifications also in the Lovolution membership. So I talk about hoarding in the Great Behavior Breakdown, but what I found really interesting from a therapy perspective, last night when it came to addressing these adults who have these issues with hoarding, neither of the therapists addressed any traumas. No trauma at any point in time was addressed with these two ladies who were struggling with these hoarding issues. The entire focus was so inside the parenting matrix. It's like, actually I should do that for tomorrow's episode of Inside the Parenting Matrix. I should review one of those kinds of shows. I'll have to do that. Which won't be so much parenting, but it definitely would be insightful. So those therapists focus solely on the behavior of hoarding. And there was a little bit of family dynamics that got discussed, but the majority of all of the resolution was in getting an organizer and getting 20 people to come and take all the shit out of these people's house, and the woman with all the clothes and all the books and stuff to organize all her stuff and go through it and give it away or throw it away, and the nasty cat woman just to clean it all out and get some of her cats to animal shelters, and obviously she apparently borders on some level of animal cruelty, so they are monitoring her now and not letting her have any more animals. But the point of what I'm saying is that they didn't deal with any trauma. At one point was there any trauma dealt with, and at one point, the lady with the cats I found really interesting, especially when they opened the refrigerator and everyone saw the dead cats, and the therapist about vomited. She said, I'm so bad, I don't even deserve to live anymore, I don't even deserve to be here anymore, I'm so bad. And she was just grieving over these cats, and she said probably 3 different times, I'm so bad, I don't even deserve to live anymore, I'm such a bad person. And I thought, you know what, that is probably a birth imprint. That is probably an imprint from a traumatic in utero preverbal stage, where she had some kind of trauma, some kind of emotional trauma. Her mother, her father had some kind of emotional trauma, which sent a message to this woman in utero that she was bad, that she was potentially unwanted, not wanted, and was causing all these problems. And I believe the root of this woman's trauma, and I'm just going off of what I observe, and just based off experience, I believe the root of this woman's hoarding is that she found these little kitty cats as someone she could love. She kept them in the home. It's like keeping them in the womb. The reason she could not let them go is because she was keeping them in the womb, keeping them safe, because that's probably one of the safest places she's ever known in her entire life. And I would have been so interested to have seen that therapist address that woman's hoarding, the behavior of hoarding, the surface. I'd have been so interested to have seen her get underneath the root of that behavior and really, really dissect what's causing that trauma. And I find this to be so interesting. It's such a big challenge when we operate within the parenting matrix. We become so consumed and so focused on behaviors, and we don't stop and slow down enough to evaluate the intensity and the experiences and the problems and the imprints that have occurred for all of us at the earliest of ages that continue to show up every day as adults. And clinicians do it, and parents do it. We all do it. We completely forget that at some point in time, this woman, both these women, which was really interesting because the daughter of one of the women, the other woman, had become like the mother. And the son was still very much stuck as an overwhelmed, helpless adolescent. So it would have been very interesting to have gone into their histories as well and to have talked about that a little bit more and kind of dice through that. And see, I don't even like to look at that as therapy, because if you take the therapist and what they were doing, what they were doing as therapists in their professional roles, if you take what they were doing as therapists, which was basically nothing, and they're calling that therapy, I would just assume not call that therapy. I guess that there to me there was no real therapy going on in the hoarding woman scenario. The papers and the clothes and stuff. The designer was doing more, had more therapeutic input than the therapist did, and so we get so focused, and we are so, especially within the parenting matrix, we are so focused on behaviors that we stop looking for anything underneath them. And that's what we have to start doing, and that's what I keep preaching to you guys every single time. We are so blinded by our obsession, our focus on behaviors, that we don't stop and just look to see what might be underneath the behavior. At the very least, you're going to find stress and fear. At the very least. Does not matter what the behavior is, and I know so many therapists don't like it when Big Papa says that. When Big Papa says there's stress and fear and potentially trauma that's driving that behavior, professionals don't like that because they don't want to deal with the freaking trauma. They don't want to deal with the pain. They don't want to deal with the anger. They don't want to deal with the sadness. They don't want to deal with the grief and the loneliness. They don't want to deal with that stuff. They just want to deal with the behavior. Man, can't we just deal with the behaviors? Why don't you stop telling all these people that there's trauma underneath this behavior? Why don't you stop taking people all the way back to in utero stage, man? Why don't you just deal with the behavior? Can't we just get somebody a medication? Man, why you gotta tell people they don't need to be looking at diagnosis as an answer? That's what I rely on. I rely on giving parents a diagnosis and sending them to my psychiatrist friends so they can give them a few different medications. Why you gotta go tell them that it's stress and fear and trauma, and if you don't deal with the stress and fear and trauma, you're just gonna add another diagnosis and another medication? Man, come on, man. Come on, Big Papa. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. I've been doing it for too long. I've been seeing it differently for too long. I'm too far outside the parenting matrix. I want you to understand that there is something that is causing the manifestation of the behaviors. And if we do not address the root cause, we are just trimming the tree, trimming the leaves. We've got to address the root cause. So if you have a child and you're dealing with hoarding, what you have to understand is you're most likely dealing with a child who comes from some gross neglect. And though whatever items they may be hoarding, and my 26-year-old adopted son was a hoarder. He came to us in the group home at 15. And he used to take everyone's stuff. He would have a room full of stuff. He'd walk around the streets and he'd find stuff and he'd bring it and put it in his room. He just had stuff up on stuff up on stuff. He didn't want to get rid of none of the stuff. Well, it's a kid who'd grown up on the streets. It's a kid who never really had anything. Everything was valuable to him. Everything brought soothing. And this is what you have to understand about children who hoard. It doesn't matter what they're hoarding. A lot of times you're dealing with children who are hoarding food. So that comes up as food hoarders, children who come from environments of neglect. They come from environments where they've spent days and weeks being hungry. And so they don't have a resting state that there's food in the fridge. See, it's called out of sight, out of mind. And when you've experienced trauma at an early age, you don't have the abstract thinking that allows you to think, now I just ate my food, and if I get hungry, I can probably go back to the fridge, or I can go into the cupboard and there's a ton of food in there. Well, in a state of stress, when you're in a pervasive state of stress, your brain doesn't focus in that abstract way. It focuses in that very concrete way, like a child who's 7 years or younger. So children 7 years and younger don't yet have abstract thinking ability. And this is what happens when children experience severe trauma. They don't have that abstract thinking ability, so they come into your home and you got all the food in the world. You got the safest house in the world. And they constantly are hoarding food. You're constantly finding wrappers of all sorts in their bedroom, in their closet, under their mattress, under their bed. And you're like, what the heck? Or why are you taking all this food, dude? What's up, man? There's plenty of food. Well, in their brain, they don't trust that there's plenty of food, because in their brain, the imprint says there's not enough food. And you know what happens when you find those wrappers? You get upset with them. You get upset with them and you say, stop taking this food. You're stealing this food. And that stresses them out even more. And you stress them out even more. You send them deeper into their brainstem. You send them deeper into the scarcity, deeper into the lack, deeper into the potential that they're going to die, that they're going to starve to death. And you know what that makes them want to do? That makes them want to go hoard more food, except now they want to be sneakier about it. You catch your child hoarding. Here's what you do. It's very simple. You get a big bowl of granola bars. Get the chewy ones. I always liked the chewy ones as a kid, but we didn't get the chewy ones. We didn't get granola bars at all. But get the chewy, the chocolate chip chewy granola bars. They're not healthy, full of sugar, but that's okay. Get some bananas, get some oranges, get some apples, get some peanuts, get some snacks. Snacks. Put a big old bowl of snacks. Put them on the kitchen table. Tell all your children, husband, wife included, anybody who wants a snack, you can have a snack anytime. Snacks fully available. Then you say to your child, but hey, I got snacks for you, and we're going to put these snacks in your room. And we're going to put them right by your nightstand. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and you need snacks, you just have your snacks. They're right there. You're always going to have enough food here. It's going to be right there. And you're giving them that visual cue. That visual cue that says there's always enough food. And then you tell them, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you get stressed and you're hungry, you just come get me and I will come get you some food. I will go get you some food. Do not lay in your bed afraid that you're not going to have any food. You do not have to go to the kitchen and take things out of the cupboard because you're afraid there's not going to be any food. You wake up and you're hungry. You wake up and you're stressed. You wake up and you're scared. Come get me and I will make sure you have food. And you create that repetition of certainty, that repetition of security, there's a word, permanence. Object permanency. Object permanency is when the child comes to establish an object as a permanent place in their life. So it's always there. It's like kids develop object permanency around their parents. They develop object permanency around their binkies, object permanency around their bedrooms. It's like a permanent object in their life, and it becomes an anchor, a regulating anchor, an anchor point in their life. And so you do that with your child. Now, what I'm also going to encourage you to do is ask your child to come to you when they're feeling afraid about food. Ask your child to come to you when they're feeling afraid, when they feel like, unless they take their brother's eraser, unless I get in brother's room and take his microphone over there off the shelf, then I'm not going to be safe. And so they take it and they want to go in the rooms. And what you tell the siblings, of children who steal, you tell them very simply, look, your brother's not stealing your stuff. He's taking it into his room. If you want your stuff, just go get your stuff. And then you say to the little brother, stay out of their room. That's not your stuff. It's their stuff. If you want some of their stuff, you ask permission. But you guys don't. He's not stealing your stuff. Because see what they want to do is, he's stealing my stuff. No. When someone steals something, you don't get it back. If you do get it back, the tires are flat and the stereo's been ripped out and something else has been taken out of it. It's stolen, it's stripped. Your sibling's not stealing your stuff. He's taking it. He's taking it and he's putting it in his room, under the mattress, under the bed. Just go get it. Tell mom and dad, go get the stuff. So it's not stealing. Then we don't have to look at it as hoarding. Instead of looking at hoarding, is you look at it as a sign that the child is stressed. Big Papa got all fuzzy all of a sudden. I'm not sure why. Look at it as a sign that your child is stressed. When your child is hoarding, it's because they're stressed and they can't regulate themselves. So look at it as a call, an invitation for you to go and provide them soothing. Right? Don't look at it as hoarding because that's just something negative. So there's some tools and techniques for you. Ashley says, you ain't lying. Some therapists I've showed your videos to immediately reject the stress model and continue to push hard for medication because they feel absolutely 100% unequivocally helpless and are unwilling to expand themselves to see something in a different way. And that is sad, sad, sad. But there are a lot of therapists, especially those connected to the Lovolution membership and a part of the Post+Institute, that are solid therapists. They know their business. They're in the trenches. They get in there. They understand stress. They understand fear. And you know what else they understand? They understand that a parent's knowledge is greater than their knowledge. That a parent's knowledge of their child is greater than their own knowledge. That their role is to guide and support and encourage and inspire and to lead the individual into seeing something that's previously been unconscious, making it more conscious. That is a powerful therapist. So that's it, guys. Remember, in any given situation, you always have two choices. You can continue to react from the parenting matrix, get stressed out, feel threatened, feel overwhelmed, feel shut down, feel defensive, blame your child for stealing all the food and being a Miss Piggy and being a hoarder. And that's choosing fear. Or you can stop. You can take 3 to 10 deep breaths. You can slow yourself down. You can move yourself outside of the parenting matrix. You can choose love and you can think, what is my child trying to tell me? And what unexpressed experience has my child had that is not allowing them to move through this behavior? Remember, get the snack bowls. Going to make a huge difference. And tell your child they can come to you if they need to. Going to make a big difference. God bless you. Big Papa loves you. I hope you will lay your heads down tonight. My hope and my prayer is that the cells of your bodies will relax and release all the stress and all the fear that you've carried for generations and generations and generations. And that when you wake up in the morning, you will feel restored, refreshed, re-energized, and reinvigorated. And I had a mom today who said, I really want to break the cycle for my daughter because I see it. I see it in my grandma. I saw it in my mom. I see it in me, and I really want to break it for my daughter. I said, no, don't break it for her, for your daughter. Break it for you. It's not too late for you to break it for you. When you break it for you, that's going to be breaking it for your daughter. All right, guys, God bless. I will see you tomorrow. Big Papa loves you. Choose love.